It's important to distinguish between what's happening on campuses and police brutality versus genocide. But I also think that we have to know that there's a connection between those two things, because the people who are protesting against genocide. And the same people who are supporting genocide are supporting a crackdown on free speech and are supporting police brutality. And people say that fascism is imperialism or colonialism turned inward. And obviously what we're seeing in Israel, in Palestine, is a colonial war, colonial genocide. And so it makes a lot of sense that we're seeing this crackdown. And it's very scary. There was a professor at Washington University who went to the hospital and the doctor said he's lucky he's still alive. This is something that Prem Sacker, who we've had on the show, tweeted out. Shocking footage shows several officers at Washington University, St. Louis, beating a professor, slamming him and dragging his limp body. SEUE history professor Steve Tamari is reportedly hospitalized with broken ribs and a broken hand. One doctor told him he's lucky to be alive. This is Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville.
Don't hurt him! Don't hurt him!
Look at that.
You have a student on the ground.
When that cop dropped his entire body weight using his knee onto his rib cage, you could have punctured a lung. You could have.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. One doctor told Tamari he is lucky to be alive. He said,
killed him.
My lungs could have been punctured and I could have died on the ground as they abused me.
Absolutely. That's why when I saw that, when you played it back, I had a visceral reaction at that moment, because holy shit.
It is so disgusting. So his mistake, his crime was filming what was happening.
Which again is not a crime.
Of course not.
Right. But in the moment, that doesn't matter. Yeah.
And we saw what they did at that other professor who was thrown on the ground. That got a lot of attention at Emory.
Get on the ground, I said, dog! Get on the ground! Oh my God! You're a rabid dog! Oh my God! Give me some cops! My head! Hit that your head! You just hit my head! On the concrete! Oh my God! Oh my God! You people are fascists! You are Hitler! You are a rabid dog! Shame on you! May you never live another day! I am a professor!
And they did that to her because she saw that, I believe, a police officer was kneeling on a student's neck or head. And she simply went over, yelling, stop it.
Right.
What's the matter with you? Stop it. And
another crime. Jill Stein herself was physically attacked and then arrested.
A presidential candidate.
She was one of among more than 80 protesters arrested at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri on Saturday. She also got attacked with a policeman's bike.
The bike, right.
Hold the line now! Hold the line! Hold the line! Hold the line! Hold the line! Hold the line!
And then she got accused of assault.
Y'all gotta go back. I'm gonna have to lock you up. Go back outside.
And remember, these are just the things that get captured. Well, I just have a friend who's at CUNY who texted me literally just now. They broke someone's leg.
I feel like, I mean, if this continues, especially in America, but I mean, we see the way things are going, at some point, someone's going to get killed.
I'm sure. I mean, all it would have taken,
the police are going to kill someone.
Yeah. Like with the sniper.
I'm sure, again, a lot of people have seen this as well, but the juxtaposition is appropriate and incredibly stark. There's no shortage of videos of literal out and out Nazis and white supremacists marching down streets in towns. Nary a policeman in sight, aside from what I imagine are probably a few policemen amongst them that are marching. We're seeing this sort of crackdown literally from students saying, please stop killing innocent men, women, and children. This is the American system dropping all pretenses. I just think it seems pretty clear that the Democratic Party and Biden et al., they don't plan on winning the election. I think it's just showing that when it comes down to it, that's not the really important thing to them. I mean, if anything, you could argue that not winning is actually more beneficial for them, because then they can spend the next few years fear-mongering and fundraising off of that. But what the most important thing is protecting their capital, protecting, the status quo, and how they talk about, like at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, about how we live in a democracy and we have this freedom. One of the things that they said was like how great it is we have a free press and a well-informed populace and things like that. What this shows to me is all of that rhetoric only goes so far as it's convenient for them. The minute that it becomes inconvenient to sustain that narrative, all pretense goes out the window and heads start hitting the pavement. A lot of these clips too, and it reminded me, the only time that I'd experienced this personally was after George Floyd was murdered, and being a part of a lot of demonstrations. There were some moments there that were really stuck with me, because in a lot of these moments of conflict, I could see in those, not in every single one of them, but there were some policemen where I looked in their eyes and it was like just a rage, just kind of like, if a dog gets really wound up and you can tell, like, they can't even hear you anymore. It's like that, but wanting to do harm to the people in front of you. And in a lot of these skirmishes, in these video clips, I've seen the same look in some of these cops' eyes. Like once they get on these people and start, like that professor was saying, right next to him was screaming, stop it, stop it.
Yeah.
Chances are they couldn't even hear her. They were like, it's insane. And, Biden's the one that not only did he not, defund, not only did he not reform, he was just amping it up, making it more and more and more.
Yeah.
And I think that it's astounding how Joe Biden has somehow managed to render the one argument of, like, at least under Trump, under me, this is not happening, but it would be happening under Trump. He has somehow managed to even take away that argument. But again, I think that this is what made me think of the whole experience with the rage and not being, tunnel vision, not being able to hear what's around you. When you had mentioned Jill Stein, it was like in that moment that I would be surprised if they even understood that they were attacking a person with the bicycle that was a presidential candidate. Whether it's this or, the most important and most horrific violence, which is what's occurring to Palestinians in Gaza. Another just maddening aspect of it to me is all of these things, if there's any sort of justice, quote unquote justice, or accountability, it's always way after the fact.
Of course.
They still allow this stuff to happen, and maybe in a year or 2 or 5 or whatever, you'll see some headline or whatever, a little blurb saying this police department ended up having to pay a couple $1 million because of, X, Y, and Z. the genocide convention. I'm glad that it's happening and whatnot, but some part of me is just like, well, what the hell good is all of this if it can't prevent it from happening in the moment? If the best that we can do is this reactionary, like, let it happen, and then afterward, we like, well, what about just stopping it right now? At least that I'm aware of in our history, there has literally been no student-led movement that has not turned out to be on the correct side of things. And the crackdown that we're seeing now, I thought that we had kind of settled all of this during the civil rights era, with the, right to protest. And then you can look back at the large nationwide student-led protests during the Vietnam War, which we haven't seen anything this widespread since that time. But just looking at all of these times in history, and yet every time it happens again, it seems like there's a significant amount of the public that's able to be convinced, for whatever reason, that the students are in the wrong here. With the benefit of hindsight now, you would think that at some point we would stop making the same mistakes again and again and again.
Well, it's also because they're trying to make them look so hateful, even though the people on the other side are actually the ones who are engaging in hate speech.
I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have already seen it, but I mean, you could even look up the newspaper, those cartoons that are in newspapers back from in Martin Luther King's time period. And those cartoons, they painted him as a, violent.
Oh, yeah.
Literally the exact same thing as we're seeing today.